Hello, Jax West here with my dog begging me on my lap. I am from Justice with Jax, obviously, and Stephen Avery Project and MAM Gossip. And today we are discussing Night Stalker that was released just a few weeks ago, right, on Netflix. And so I watched it a few weeks ago. Hello, Bryce. And I was just watching it a little bit again. Everybody knows of, well, not everybody, but I would assume, hello, Samantha, if you're somebody who is into true crime, that you know of the Richard Ramirez case, who was called The Night Stalker. And so Netflix put, how many parts was that now? 4, right? I think. Even though, so I played it again this morning to try and be doing my homework for doing this live. And just like the first time I watched it, it didn't keep my interest like, you know, many other documentaries have done. So, I may have zoned out or, you know, been surfing on Facebook. Hello, Debbie's. So, the first thing that I will say that I come away with that is, you know, I know they do the whole Satan worshiper thing, and Richard Ramirez pushes that with the pentagram and, you know, the stuff that he put on the walls. I think that's all bullshit. I don't think he's a real, like, devil worshiper or whatever. It reminds me of the Manson case, and when he told them to write something witchy, you know, just to scare people. So I think he thinks of himself as a badass to, oh, look at me, I worship the devil. You know, to just try and make him scarier. So I don't think he's, you know, like this card-carrying Satanist or anything like that. Now, obviously something is really wrong with the dude. Look at all that he did. So, you know, so as Bryce says, pure evil, however you want to word it. The dude is bad. And he's absolutely somebody when, you know, I used to be so pro death penalty, but it's after seeing something like Making a Murderer where, yeah, things can be out there in the news that makes it seem like somebody is so guilty, but how do you know for sure? So how can you, you know, really support the death penalty? And so for me, it has to be, you know, really severe cases where there hasn't been any corruption. It is for sure who is the guilty party, right? And Richard Ramirez is guilty. There is no rehabilitating him. He's never going to help society. So, you know, should he get to live out the rest of his life? Whether or not it's on death row or elsewhere, I don't think so. An excellent point, Glover, that a pentagram isn't necessarily a satanic symbol either. But that's the way this dude was using it, because he just wants to be scary. You know, and he didn't have to use the Satanism angle to be scary. You're killing and raping, you know, all ages. That's pretty frightening in itself. You don't need some phony devil worship thrown in there. But I guess for some people, maybe that does make them scarier. Another thing that, now, of course, we have to remember, this is what I'm discussing on the case today, is things that, wait, hold on. Rick says, isn't this more of an false imprisonment site. Ramirez was 100% guilty. He ain't even trying to say he ain't. You guys got to get to. For Life, the Christopher Wallace case, or the Lincoln Lawyer, not the James Patterson version, the one with the truth. This is not, Rick, Justice with Jax is not just wrongful convictions. This is injustice, period, anywhere. Or, and true crime, gets rolled into that. So, so we don't only cover cases of innocent people on this page. On Stephen Avery Project, that is 100% he's false imprisoned. Or Melissa Kaluzinski is false imprisoned. But here we can discuss any case of injustice, whether or not it's a wrongful conviction, whether or not it is black people being killed by police, whatever. So it's more open on this page. That's why I have the different pages. Let me scroll. Debbie says, Glover, I try to use your last name since we've got so many Debbies, says he's pretty articulate in his interviews. Yeah. No problem, Rick. I understand the confusion because I am, so steadfast on my, wrongful convictions things, but I don't brush everything with one brush, so like some people could think I'm anti-police because of these wrongful conviction cases, but I'm not. I'm anti-bad police, so just believing, just because somebody's a police officer, it doesn't mean they have good intent. Just because somebody's a teacher doesn't mean they have good intent. There's good and bad in everything in life, so you have to go by the evidence, by the facts on whether or not somebody's guilty or innocent or good or bad. Back to Night Stalker though. It bothered me. I'll get back to that in a second, Rick, because I'm going to forget my thought here. It bothered me about, I get it, that press, and I'm not somebody who's anti-press either, not by any stretch, but the press and such trying to, be the first to release stuff on the case that could possibly blow the case. There is, real reasons why you're not going to release everything to help you catch the person. So that bothered me because it's almost like, the press is interfering with this case. But then on the flip side, all right, you had these two cops who had been on this case and put their life into it. You had the one cop who, his family went away to make sure they were safe. So yeah, they wanted to get this guy, but then they just want to make it so, well, they're the ones that get to do everything and decide everything on the case, even though things went out of their jurisdiction and whatnot. So, so then it goes, okay, are you making those decisions because of what it would bring to the case? Or do you want to be the one on the news that is breaking this? I don't know. So that stuff, but again, I'm going off of only what we saw on Netflix. That doesn't tell the whole story, as we know. And yes, I do watch the series For Life. I do recommend it to people to check out, where you had the first season was a guy that was wrongfully accused. And now, I don't want to go into it, but now he's taking on, there's cases, what's the line they always use on those shows? Ripped from the headlines. And it's based on a true story, this guy in For Life. So I do think it is a good show to check out. Yeah, the journalist annoyed me. What else was there? There was something else that bothered me on it that I wanted to make sure that I brought up in watching it. well, another thing was the fans. And we know that from, every famous serial killer case that, they get these weird, crazy fans that, range in how crazy they are. There's the ones who just want to become the pen pal and be like that person's friend. And then there's the weirdos that, think they're in love with them and all that. It's so bizarre to me. I do not, that Richard Ramirez guy, well, I don't think Ted Bundy's attractive either. And that's what they always say is, oh, he's so attractive. And I'm not saying it because, Ted Bundy is a killer and I'm using that to prejudice my opinion on his looks, because no, I can separate that. If I think somebody's attractive, I'll say they're attractive. I do not think Ted Bundy's attractive. Richard Ramirez, not attractive. And yes, I know there's more into a relationship than somebody's looks, but still, it's just like, I don't get it. Bryce, but Zac Efron as Bundy was hot. Yeah, that's something else you can watch on Netflix. Yeah, you got a point there. Zac Efron as anything is hot. So let's just put that out there. There's no doubt to me that Ramirez is 100% guilty. I feel so bad for California for when this was going down. I was too young to, know anything at that time. I can't imagine the fear that everybody had then, because there is no rhyme or reason to his victims. A 6-year-old. And good for that woman who was the 6-year-old that then went to the lineup. That can be so very scary. And, good for her that she did it. And I can't imagine what she has gone through. But she seems to be somebody who has dealt with it well, where she even says at the end, she's gone to school, she's married, she has a family, and she's not going to let this thing that happened to her when she was 6 years old define her life. Yeah, Glover says she was inspiring and so brave. Yeah, that's amazing, I think this is my favorite thing. This is what I wanted to talk about. How he's caught. How much do you love the neighborhood that he was running in, stopping him? That just filled me with such, happiness, hearts and butterflies, that this neighborhood came together to stop this predator, this murderer. Whether or not you have a whole group with you, or, this is a guy who murdered how many people? I don't think, anybody will ever know how many people he killed. So you're still doing it to your own detriment. You could get hurt trying to capture this guy. And I do believe if you're in that position and this guy's there, you absolutely have to do whatever you have to do to get him. He's killing children, but still major props to that community that came together to get that guy. I loved that so much. That was my favorite part of this whole documentary series, was that neighborhood getting him. And Katrina, you asked what is For Life about. So For Life is it's based on a true story of a guy who was wrongfully convicted. And so the first season is all about his wrongful conviction and what he's doing to try and clear his name. And this this is the second season right now that's on. It's a network show here in the States. ABC, I want to say, but it's called For Life. And so I recommend it. It's got a lot, like I said, ripped from the headlines. So talking about Black Lives Matter and all, that kind of stuff. And you're really seeing things from a legal aspect and how broken the system is here in the States. We know that from, because I know many of you who either are watching this live or will watch it later come here from Stephen Avery case. So how bad our system is here. And so this show shows you more of that from the legal angle. Yeah, Rick says he became a lawyer in prison and he's one of the first ones to do it. So it's based on a true story. I believe it was a book too, I think. But don't hold me to that. Maybe Rick knows. So, I have that set up on my DVR. So I watch that show every week. So it's not a documentary, but it's a good show. So, and then another thing on Night Stalker. Now, we talked about this last week. The connection of the Night Stalker with the Cecil Hotel. Now, I know it said somewhere like he had stayed there, but then I saw something else saying there's no proof that he was ever actually there. So, I don't know. I think that gets used when people really want to make the Cecil Hotel to look like this big evil entity. So they want to say the Night Stalker with the pentagram and devil worshiper was there, to add to the, spookiness of the Cecil Hotel. So that's my opinion on it. And I don't know if any of you watched Saturday Night Live this past Saturday with the guy from Bridgerton. I know that's not what we're here to discuss is Bridgerton, but the guy from Bridgerton. But one of the skits had Hotel Cecil on it, but just as where an event was happening, and a line in the skit said something like, we know we have this planned before this Netflix thing, so I don't think they made it the part of the skit because of the documentary. It just happened to be. Well, thank you very much, Rick. I don't know if I'll be on here next week. We're talking, because I usually, if I do Facebook Lives, I do them on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Central Time. So, talking about next week, I wouldn't be here on Justice with Jax. That I'll do it over on Stephen Avery Project. Christopher, who makes the Facebook events and posts all the reminders and stuff, who's a moderator of all my groups, he'll post it in here so you guys will all know where I'm at. But we've got, due to the pandemic, even though Making a Murderer, it's been out since 2014, we have new people who watch the series every day, and they don't know what we know on the case, those of us who have been there since the beginning. And so we get the same questions over and over again every day on the case, and people wanting to know where it's at now. So I'm thinking of next Wednesday we'll be live on Stephen Avery Project to just do a general discussion of his case, so all the new people can be brought up to speed or ask any of their questions and go from there. So, but we're always up for suggestions or ideas of a focus for a Facebook Live. We typically cover things that, cases that are in the news or, the Netflix documentaries. So, Christopher can put it to a vote on things on, which famous case would you like us to discuss next? And we can do that. And, there are also, all these lives are always free flowing too. where, you know, I get pulled into different directions on what I discuss, and I'm pretty scatterbrained when I talk. So, you know, squirrel. So I'm up for discussing, answering, whatever when it comes to cases of injustice. And everybody is entitled to their opinions here, but everyone needs to be respectful. But Christopher is who suggested we cover the Hotel Cecil Hotel, whatever it was called. So we did that last week. And he's the one that's got his pulse on, or has got the pulse of what's popular going on right now. I kind of get distracted in other things. So he messaged me the other day and said that this Night Stalker is something that people are talking about in our, because we've got a group called MAM Gossip that's off of our Stephen Avery project, and that's where a lot of the real meat in these discussions come from, is in the MAM Gossip, which is a closed group. And so I guess it was something that was being discussed in there. So, hello Tammy. And we started MAM Gossip because if we discuss any other cases on Stephen Avery project, we get a lot of people who get upset because the thing they always say is, what does this have to do with Stephen? All they care about is Stephen's case. They don't want to hear about any other case. So then I had started MAM Gossip so we could discuss other cases. And then eventually this Justice with Jax page got started, because even though MAM Gossip would say we're covering other cases, we still get people who get kind of upset in there. So other cases are okay to be discussed in that group, but now we have this whole separate group that's period. We could discuss any case we want, not just wrongful convictions. Any case of injustice, anything that I feel like talking about, basically. And it's Christopher who's making a whole lot of the posts that are in here. You know, I do on occasion when I'm going through my feed and I see something on a case or something, I'll share it as well. But Christopher's doing the brunt of the work. So, as I say on all these lives, thank you, Christopher. Christopher is the one keeping everything running, and he keeps me on track because, you know, I get off into my own world on things. So Christopher comes up with a lot of the ideas that we do. Like, we're also going to be doing another rally. We did one last year in July for Stephen Avery up at his prison in Waupun, Wisconsin, and we'll be doing another one this year. So, and then we recently did a whole day of Stephen Avery discussion and all that, an online rally thing. So that's all Christopher. But yeah, so today the topic was the Night Stalker. Dun dun dun. Like I said at the beginning of this, it was interesting. You've heard of the case, but it didn't quite really grab me like some other documentaries have, you know, that then makes me so obsessed with the case and wanting to look for more information. You know, obviously Making a Murderer is one of those cases that did that. The West Memphis 3, you know, West Memphis 3 is probably the first case that I really started looking into. And that was before, you know, internet was like it is now. So you didn't really have too much to find information that wasn't from the Netflix documentary. So, or the HBO documentary, as that one was. So that's something that's really pretty cool, that look at what can be done now by these cases getting spotlit like this, with the Richard Ramirez case, there's nothing the at-home researchers can do. But, you know, in the Stephen Avery case, there's a lot of stuff that is still out there. And there has been at-home researchers that have found information that has helped Stephen's case. So, Bryce says evil genius will suck you in for sure. I've seen that. I can't recall anything offhand because I think I watched it a while ago. So I don't recall it, but I know I saw it. And yeah, Glover, I agree. It was nice to see the cops follow the evidence through. And it was nice to see cops that that didn't come off as corrupt and just trying to push their narrative. That's another thing, though, that I wanted to mention. It wasn't one of the two major investigators. It was the guy from the other place. Sorry that I don't recall what it was. But the one that hit Ramirez. I don't like that. And I know the way he's telling it too is he hit the guy and Ramirez talked shit, and then he said he, pulled his fist way back and was gonna, because he was trying to get him to give Richard Ramirez's name to him, and then before he could hit, that's when the friend, so didn't hit Richard Ramirez, it was the friend, sorry, and then the guy gave up his name. I understand wanting to do something like that, but you can't do that. You can't badger the witness, right? You can't do that. So if I'm going to have an issue if they do that to somebody who's innocent, you got to have that issue when they do it to somebody who's guilty. So that made me uncomfortable, and also the way the cop was saying it, like there was nothing wrong with what he did. That bothered me. Yes, Laverne, West Memphis 3, such a sad case. I always recommend watching Paradise Lost, all 3 parts, and fall down that rabbit hole. It's really sad what happened to those 3 boys, and McFadden mentioning Khalif Browder reminds me of the exonerated Central Park 5. The Central Park 5 really, that was painful. And that's another example in wrongful convictions when you don't have to be somebody with a low IQ like Brendan to be manipulated by police to say you committed a crime when you didn't. These were young kids, but not dumb kids. And you get tricked. You get manipulated into saying you did something you didn't do. And in that one, you've got the boys that then took a deal and the one who won't ever say he's guilty and had to stay in there longer than the rest. Just a horrible story. Bryce says, the innocent man was good, I think. It's the one where 2 guys years apart are wrongfully convicted of murder in the same small town. That sounds familiar too. Laverne read the book Damien wrote. Very good book. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I have that on my iPad. I read it, when it first came out. Because there's a lot of information in Damien's book that isn't in Paradise Lost. So that's why, you always have to do your homework on things. When it comes to making a murderer, that is something that those of us who have been on Stephen's side from when Making a Murderer came out, there are the people that are referred to as guilters who then will say about us that we're just swayed by a one-sided documentary, or I don't even know if they call it a documentary. I think they just call it a Netflix show because they're trying to make some slam on it like it's all Hollywood lights and magic, right? But that's absolutely not true. The people that I know who are genuine supporters, not the wacky fans, and there's plenty of those out there, we have done our due diligence on that case where, we have read all the court transcripts. We have watched the interrogations or listened to them if that's all that was available. I have gone to the scene of the alleged crime. I have talked to a lot of the people involved in the case. And there's nothing in it for me whether or not Stephen is guilty or innocent. If Stephen was guilty, I absolutely would say he is. What do I care? I just want there to be justice. So when you watch Paradise Lost, they don't have everything in there. So one thing that I remember, and it's because it's been a while since I've read Damien's book. I can't remember what year it came out. But the cop that instantly came after Damien in that case, there's a whole lot more that this guy had been doing to Damien prior to those 3 boys being missing. And of course what drew me to that case early on I think the first time I heard it was People magazine. Because again, like I said, you didn't have the internet like you do now, and so it was a story in People magazine was probably the first place I had heard it. And you're seeing that because, don't know if you can tell, I kind of have tattoos, and I listen to rock music, and it was made out that, Damien's an outcast because he wears black clothing and listens to Metallica. And so he was singled out for that, period, because people thought of him as odd. And then because of the long hair and rock music and black clothes, from there they make it out, again, the devil worshiper bullshit. Which is, if you know anything about Damien, is absolutely not true. Damien's like a student of all religion. That's his thing. So, and he was very into more like Wiccan, because he was believing in, earth and all that. But people want to use that to make you look evil. So that's what drew me in at first. But the documentary, I felt really well done. And that was one of the first things I noticed when I started watching the Cecil Hotel, is that it's done by Joe Berlinger. Joe Berlinger did Paradise Lost. So I knew it was going to be a quality production, because what he did with Paradise Lost, I truly believe that James Baldwin, Jesse Miskelly, and Damien Eccles there's a good chance they would still be in prison today, if not for Paradise Lost shedding light onto their case and people getting involved. So that's what's so important now from all these other documentaries being made on these cases, to keep that interest in it alive, and that maybe it will help people find evidence. Laverne says, do you know if anyone was ever charged in the West Memphis 3? No, nobody has been charged. It's one of those things, it's like O.J. Simpson, who O.J. Simpson is guilty. But, remember the famous line is, O.J.'s going to look for the real killers. No, he's not. So same thing goes for law enforcement in that area. They're not, because to find who really did it opens them up even more into what they did to those 3 boys was wrong. So, and when you watch the 3 episodes, documentaries, whatever you want to call it, of Paradise Lost, there's many years between when they were filmed, you know, as this case progresses. And it went down in one direction that you thought the one weird, wacky stepfather, I don't remember his name, but, you know, and everything you were seeing in that documentary was making that guy look very suspicious. There's Bryce saying, "What's cooking? Haha. I'm not cooking. That's my nephew Dylan cooking." They hear the microwave in there on the Facebook Live.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't care. It's just funny because when I do these Facebook Lives, food always gets brought up on what we're eating and what we like. So that's why he's right away saying, "What's cooking?"
Bacon.
Bacon. Dylan is making bacon. So many different years. There's Bryce saying, "Well, I want to know." Well, now you know. It's bacon. And Debbie says she was just asking what snacks. Not eat. I'm gonna eat something when this live is over. But was it the second documentary in Paradise Lost that you were really thinking it was the first weird stepfather? And I believe now it is still on the other stepfather that the evidence points his way. But I don't think anybody's doing anything about that to find out what happened to those 3 little boys, which is really sad. Laverne says, "Watch the Cecil Hotel last week. Richard Ramirez stayed there while he was murdering some people." Yeah, Laverne, that's something I know was said in that, but then also something said, no, he really didn't. So I don't know what is true and what's not on that. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because, you know, he's from the California area, and that hotel, they had said, what, it was like $3 to stay there a night? Very affordable. So, and you're obviously can be on the down low that it's in the middle of Skid Row. So, perfect place for somebody who, you know, doesn't want to be seen or noticed to be. So if he was there, I won't be surprised. If he wasn't there, I'm not surprised. But the Cecil Hotel, that I know another thing, and we discussed it last week, that's gotten a lot of attention. That also didn't really, it grabbed me more the Night Stalker, but it's, you know, where I did start doing some Googling on it after I watched it, just to see, you know, to look up other things on it, but it didn't really grab me like Making a Murderer or Paradise Lost or others. So that's that. As I said earlier in this video, so next week on Wednesday, not same bat channel, but would be the same bat time, so not on Vagina Bat channel, over on Stephen Avery Project, we'll probably be doing a live on the public page of Stephen Avery Project. If you don't know of that Facebook page, it was the first Making a Murderer Facebook page, not started by me. I took it over a little under a year after it had started. And it's the biggest. We've got the biggest following over there. And we have so many new people watching Making a Murderer that are looking for information. Hey, get out. Of course, now my dog going crazy by the microwave that Dylan had made the bacon, trying to see if she can find some scraps of bacon. So that's what we'll be doing next week, is we'll be over on Stephen Avery Project to talk about that case, and we'll be doing it on the public page where, you know, we're getting the bulk of the new people. Then we have the Stephen Avery Project closed group where people can get into more discussion there, but where we really talk about that case is the closed group called MAM Gossip, because there's a lot of things in Stephen and Brendan's case that the public doesn't know. that if you talk about it just in general to the public, a lot of people don't want to listen to it because their first instinct is to sympathize, empathize with the Avery family. But there is plenty of evidence to show you why that should not be the case. So instead of arguing with people about it on Stephen Avery Project, we get into that on MAM Gossip. So, and we've taken field trips where, so I've taken people to the alleged scenes. So you can go into the videos on there and find all that. Oh, Laverne says she would like to join. Yeah, it's called MAM. So MAM's, for people who don't know, because we get that all the time too, that they don't know what MAM is, stands for Making a Murderer. So it's just called MAM, and then the second word is gossip. And that's where you can, yeah. And I just ask people when you post in that group to be kind, that we get the new people every day who will come across evidence that we've known for a while, and they'll say it like, oh my God, did you know that the key they found isn't her main key? Well, yes, we all know that. And then we'll have some people who will get mad and like talk down to that person. And I don't allow that. I don't like that, because we were all new to the case at one time and discovering that information for the first time. So just, give people then the complete story on that and guide them there. And I also always tell people to don't take my word for it. It's all out there. The truth is out there. X-Files. You can go to StephenAveryCase.org, I believe it is. That's where all the documents and court transcripts and the interrogations and everything is. So you can go read all that for yourself and listen to it and watch it for yourself and get your own opinion. You don't have to listen to me. But I'll just tell you before you get started, I'm right. So, just so you know before you get it, you even go into that. Anybody else have anything they want to say about Night Stalker before we wrap this one up? Going once. Going twice. Because otherwise, I'm going to go and take my dogs outside so they can run around. I'm in the Chicago area, and we have some nice days, and it's great to be able to let the dogs get out and run around. The only minus to that is, of course, snow is melting and getting muddy, and so the dogs get yuck, so that's not fun. Laverne's been listening to the phone calls for 2 weeks, sometimes all night. Yeah, we covered all those calls. There are Brendan calls and there are Stephen calls, and we went over there. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in those calls. Debbie says, how's Kai? So for those that don't know, Kai is my foster dog. She is a 4.5-year-old German Shepherd that I volunteer with a animal rescue. And they get a lot of dogs. Most of the dogs come from Texas. I guess Texas is like the worst place for dogs to be abused. And so Kai was pregnant and in a pound that then got pulled and then transported up here. And what I do with the rescue is I will go drive and pick up the dog. So I've only done it twice, and so I meet in Missouri. And so I went and picked Kai up and brought her back, and then she went to the rescue. The day I got her to the rescue, she delivered her puppies. They were all dead. And Kai has heartworms, and then she also had a disease from being bit by a tick. And so I guess her story is she's a purebred German Shepherd that is from a champion line of German Shepherds, and so she was used by these people just for breeding, and that they would keep her tied up outside and just have her raped for puppies. And when she got heartworm, they're like, nope, we don't want to deal with this, and so they dumped her. So we are fostering her now currently, because so that night when she lost the puppies, Jeff and I felt so horrible that we decided that we would foster her, and if she got along with our 3 current dogs, we would adopt. We are having some issues with her that she has attacked our other dogs. She only attacks them inside the house. Outside, they're fine, but she's not fixed. And the vet has said that, well, first she's got to get the whole heartworm thing done, which that's a big, long process where she's been on pills that she's got to take. And she goes next week, I believe it's next week, for her first shot. And that's going to be a big trying thing, because once she gets the shot, she can't move. We have to keep her as still as possible, because any movement can now, the adult dead heartworms, in her heart, can break off and kill her. So, and I think that's like 30 days. So that's going to be like impossible. So she has to go through all of that. And then the vet said they also need her to go through one heat to like clear out her system or whatever. And then they can fix her. So I don't know if maybe when she's fixed, it will get some of the aggression out that she has with the other dogs, or is the aggression just pure territory thing that, she was this abandoned dog that was tied up outside, and, she doesn't want these dogs, even though this is their home. She, this is mine now. She stays, this is a split level house. So the room I'm in right now is on the main floor. And then there's a floor downstairs here that's where Jeff has his fish and his bar, so it would be like a family room type thing. That's where Kai spends most of her time. So, the other 3 dogs are up here with me right now, and Kai is downstairs. And so she stays down there by herself all day, except for the times when I call all the dogs for let's go outside. And then she'll go outside, and then her and Mallory, my pit bull, so my big one, they play and have a whole lot of fun. And there's no fights. Everything is fine out there. My 2 other dogs are smaller, and so the middle dog, the only boy dog, she attacked him pretty hardcore. There was no blood, but she grabbed him by the neck and was shaking him around and scared the hell out of me. So Mickey is now petrified of her. So, but that's something I'm going to do since it's nice out. I did it yesterday too, where I set up a chair and I sit outside and I brush Kai, because the 3 existing dogs that I have are all short hair. Their fur's no issue. But now with Kai, and I don't know if it's from her living her entire life in Texas that she's never been exposed to, well, I say this now when Texas has had this horrible cold and snow, but she's never really dealt with cold and snow till she came up here. So has that caused her, double coat to come in hardcore? And so, my house is disgusting. We're like vacuuming on a regular basis, trying to keep up with it all. And it's just so bad, her fur. So yesterday I took her outside and brushed her where the fur could just fly. And I'm going to do that today too. Typically Jeff and I have been brushing her together every other day, where Jeff is brushing her and I'm using a vacuum at the same time. So I can be sucking up the fur as he's brushing it off of her. Because how do you keep up with this? It's a mess. If anybody's got any tips for me on long hair or German Shepherd hair, message me. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today, where we discussed the Night Stalker, and as you see, we went off onto many other things. We will keep you posted in here on any cases that interest us. Feel free in the group, and I gotta sneeze, and it's not coming. I just sweep it under the couch. Okay, Bryce. In the Justice with Jax group, feel free to post anything you would like on there on any case you would want to discuss. It's completely open. And then Stephen Avery Project is if there's any development in Stephen's case, I will bring it to you immediately. And then another case that I work on is the Melissa Kaluzinski case, who she and her family have become very close friends of mine. And and Melissa has the same attorney as Stephen. They both have Kathleen Zellner. So as soon as anything develops in Melissa's case, I'll bring that to you here as well. So, and if you don't know the Melissa Kaluzinski case, please look into that case. And we've done many lives about it before. Oh, and I completely forgot. That was another idea that Christopher had, and I've done nothing on. See, Christopher, you haven't nagged me on that one. Is to do an online day discussing Melissa's case. And her dad actually called me yesterday, and I wasn't able to take his call. So when I talk to her dad, maybe I'll talk to him about it too, because if we were to do an online rally for the Melissa Kaluzinski case, I absolutely want her dad, Paul, involved in that. But we have done Facebook Lives with Paul before. Not here. I've done it on Melissa's page. And then we've also done something on Stephen Avery Project when I'm like, haters be damned that only want to hear about Stephen's case. I really want people to care about Melissa's case. So we've done a live on there before too, me trying to get Melissa some attention. And knock on wood, hopefully they're going to be getting that virus to everybody in Melissa's prison, because I would visit her every other week, and we're coming up on a year since I've been able to visit. I last visited her mid-March last year. So hopefully visits can resume, because I think that is horrible that inmates are not getting to see their loved ones. Really bothers me. Bothers me a lot. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. And for listening to the drama with my foster dog, Kai, too. We will talk soon. Go out and enjoy the weather if you're where you got some gorgeous weather like we have here. Investigation